The Toronto Blue Jays have made multiple moves as things have taken a surprising turn for this team. We're going to break down those moves and discuss what it means going forward, as this is not ideal. Not only is it not ideal, it changes the outlook of this team for the next little while. We're going to break that down, as well as discuss some other updates and some interesting stats that have come out surrounding the Toronto Blue Jays that no one is talking about. A ton to go over today, folks. But before we get into it, if you're a part of the 71% who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Jays content. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys again for your continued support over here as we're on the road to, of course, the big goal of 20,000 subscribers. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a lot to go over today. And obviously, the Jays are in a very interesting scenario right now. They have lost a couple games in a row. They had a brutal loss yesterday against the Rays, and the Rays seem to be like they are every year, but even when they aren't in Tropicana Field, they are the kryptonite of the Toronto Blue Jays. But we have some interesting moves the Jays have made, and this is very unfortunate. Now, a bunch of things to go over here. Let's just start with the move, and then, of course, some updates surrounding that move. So yesterday before the game, but we have some new updates that are coming out this morning into yesterday night. Paxton Schultz has been recalled from AAA, and he pitched yesterday, but Jimmy Garcia was placed on the 15-day IL, and as the day, hours went on after the game, we got some more updates surrounding this, but it seems like, well, for one, Jimmy Garcia is out for the next 2 weeks, minimum, right? And this is really, really bad news. Now, this changes, of course, the outlook of everything, but if you're curious about the injury, so they're placing him on the IL with a right shoulder impingement. Manager John Schneider said the issue developed slowly over the last few weeks. Paxton Schultz will be active. Now, this is interesting, and it makes things very intriguing for this bullpen. I mean, Jimmy Garcia pitched May 22nd. He was still throwing 99, all these different things. He's been really good this season. He had back-to-back outings where he gave up 4 runs. He gave up 3 runs in back-to-back outings. Other than that, he has been absolute nailed. I don't think he's given up a run besides those 7 earned runs in the span of 2 days. But he has been one of the best relievers for this Jays bullpen, and a bullpen that not necessarily is directly dealing with injuries, but it kind of is. Eric Swanson, Spencer Turnbull, who's a starter, he's, coming back up to the Blue Jays system here soon, but of course he's coming back up, meaning from the Florida Complex League. The bullpen's in rough shape right now without Jimmy Garcia, and John Schneider spoke out following yesterday's game, but even before, about how difficult it's going to be to manage their bullpen now. And we're going to dive into it, but their depth relievers are not where they need to be, I guess is the best way to put it, because depth or high-end relievers, they've had a very, very good bullpen this year, the Toronto Blue Jays. Jeff Hoffman's been elite. Brendan Little's been elite. Mason Flaherty's been elite. All 3 of those guys have been absolutely elite. And Jimmy Garcia, who's now down. So this move makes things, take a big turn for this team, because now they need to navigate in a couple of different ways. And their best relievers here are mostly like 2 of their best relievers are lefties. So over the next few days, and this is a crucial stretch of play for this team, you're going to have to be able to, figure it out without Jimmy Garcia. And, could be a roster move coming. Of course, that was the Jimmy Garcia move, but it also answers and opens up the can of worms of, has this bullpen been overworked? And Buck and Dan were talking about on the broadcast yesterday. Jimmy Garcia was on pace for high 60s, innings this season, which is it's a lot. It is a lot of, and gains appeared in it. It's a lot of everything, right? And, if you're approaching the 70, 80 inning mark as a reliever, that is not unheard of, but it is very, very high, especially in this day and age. This bullpen was so overworked at the beginning of the year that they're now starting to see the consequences a little bit. Jeff Hoffman's not quite as good as he was to start the year because he was overworked. Jimmy Garcia, overworked clearly, and now is going to, the Jays are paying the price for it. And the good news is the offense is slowly starting to get back on track. The bad news is, now that it's getting back on track, the bullpen is a little bit, I guess weak would be the word to use. Not weak in the sense of bad pitchers. They still have an elite bullpen, but they're missing some of their guys, and you're going to have to ask other guys to step up. And let me know in the comment section right now down below, who do you think needs to step up, and who ultimately do you think is going to step up surrounding the bullpen, because you have reinforcements coming in, which we'll dive into, but I expect Mason Flaherty and, most importantly, Yariel Rodriguez, who has been absolutely dominant lately, to be that number 1 guy who steps up. But speaking of stepping up, we got this update as well. Ryan Burr and Eric Swanson are scheduled to make their next rehab appearances which is today, and then Swanee on Tuesday. So the good news is, with, of course, Jimmy Garcia going down, this was, of course, scheduled beforehand, they have reinforcements coming in. Now, both Ryan Burr and Eric Swanson, I expect, when healthy, to be called up to the team. You have Paxton Schultz. You have a bunch of guys you can move around, but the Jays desperately need Eric Swanson back. His splitter's great against lefties. Obviously, they don't really need a ton of help against lefties because they have, Brendan Little, Mason Flaherty, but they just need another leverage guy. And if you had Eric Swanson, and we can paint this picture for a minute, when healthy, if you had Eric Swanson to this team, that bullpen is one of the best in baseball. Brendan Little, Mason Flaherty, those 2 guys being elite. You pair that with Eric Swanson, assuming he's fairly good. Yariel Rodriguez, Jeff Hoffman, Jimmy Garcia. That is like 6 or 7 guys who are absolute dynamite out of the bullpen. And that's the high upside of it. And hopefully we're going to get some positive news surrounding both Ryan Burr and Eric Swanson here today, and of course on Tuesday for Swanee there. And he hasn't played yet this season, so it's going to be pretty crucial for him, I think, to make just get back to where he was. He didn't have a great year last year. Last year, of course, he was dealing with a bunch of different things. In 2023, he was one of the reasons the Jays made the playoffs. That was the year, of course, prior offseason, they traded Teoscar Hernandez for, of course, Eric Swanson and Adam Macko. If he can go back to being somewhat of what he was in 2023, this team is in fantastic, fantastic shape. And you look back to, and this tweet was, of course, from a few days ago, it's tailed off since then because the offense, of course, over the past couple games has been very poor, 2 runs combined. But the hitters are starting to hit. Kirk, Bichette, Guerrero hit a home run yesterday. Berger's looking really good. If they can continue to do that for the rest of this month, I mean, the pitching staff has been solid. It's been a little bit sketchy at times. But in this Rays series, the Jays just haven't hit the ball well enough. And if you can continue to just lock this down, specifically the hitting side of the ball, you'll be in very good shape. And as it pertains to Jimmy Garcia, he's been dynamite this year. 4 saves, 3.15 ERA in 21 games. Of course, they traded him when he was elite from the Jays to the Mariners, and he wasn't great with the Mariners. And then, of course, we got Clase back, who's on the team right now. And then they also got Jimmy Garcia back, 2-year, $50 million deal. But he's been so good. But look at the games. He's on track for an unbelievable amount of games, like 64, 65 games and a ton of innings pitched, more than 68 innings pitched, of course. But it's going to be a crazy of every bullpen guy. He's 34 years old. He comes in to spring training. Keegan Matheson was talking about it on our video way back before in spring training. These guys come out throwing as hard as they can, guys like Jimmy Garcia, and that's going to, ultimately could lead to injuries. But when you're throwing them as much as they have been, let's not forget Nick Sandlin's also out with an injury. He was one of the Jays' best relievers, especially extra inning guys. Like, there's so many injuries they're dealing with here, and they have, to date in the AL East, the hardest strength of schedule. And I believe it's based on opponent win percentage, not relative power index plus. But regardless, they have the 7th hardest strength of schedule in baseball, both based on opponent's winning percentage, and the hardest in the AL East, which means if they can just float and continue to float, they'll be in good shape. And you look at the bullpen now, this is how it shapes up without Jimmy Garcia. I mean, Jose Urena, Paxton Schultz, Braden Fisher has been unbelievable as a rookie. A 24-year-old is yet to give up a run in 7 innings. The team has ability, but they need it all to come together. Something always, it never comes together for this team. They're now under 500 again after being a game over 500. You sweep the Padres, and then you go and you lose 2 to the Rays, very similar to last week or 2 weeks ago. It's an interesting one. And also, Andres Jimenez, he's working on a rehab assignment soon. So let me know down below what your thoughts are. A very scary move. Hopefully, the Toronto Blue Jays can get him back soon. Most importantly, they need to continue to win some games and get the offense going. But that'll wrap it up. Let me know down below what your thoughts are on this. Hopefully, the Jays can take care of business this afternoon. See you guys later.